Hey there, Russ here. Welcome back to the shop. Let's talk about this fella right here, my HBS system, home backup system. I really like it. It works real well. It's easy to hook up. And to fire it up, if my power goes out, I can easily, in about less than 5 minutes, easily, probably 2 minutes, I can unplug, turn certain breakers off, turn certain breakers on, plug the unit in, and power it up. And quickly have my electrical power back to the whole house. And it'll run the house for quite a long time. I don't know if it'll quite go 24 hours, so I am going to add another battery. So I'll have 4 batteries on here instead of 3. So I'm going from 15 kilowatt hours to 20 kilowatt hours. And it's a 6,000 watt output system, 240 volts. So it's a pretty good, it's large enough to be able to run my house when the power goes out. I may have to play a little bit of musical breakers to turn certain things off, but overall it should be a pretty clean operating system for when the power goes down. So anyway, but I am also have realized one thing. This particular inverter, every inverter you use has what you call an idle time. The amount of time it takes that while it's running, it's also using that electricity to power up, to convert the power that you have going in and out. This one here costs you 135 watts per hour. And that maybe that don't sound like much, but that's, when you think about it, over 24 hours, foghorn, must be a boat coming through. But at 3.1 kilowatts per day, that means I really am only running a 12 kilowatt system. So I think I'm going to boost that up a little bit, and I think I'm also going to give an alternative. So if I don't need 240 volts, I'm also going to put an all-in-one 3,000 watt inverter on here. And I can run the house off of that 120 volts instead of the 240, and I'm only going to be using 50 watts per hour. And that's, like a 1/3 the cost. So I'm saving 60 to 70% of the battery, of the power I'm using just to operate that. So it's kind of like having an eco mode. And it'll still all have its own plugins, and I'll be able to plug it in such a way and use the right plug-in adapter to plug the 220 volt system into my house instead of the 240, and it'll only cost me 50 watts per hour to run that one. Why would I do that? Well, for example, in what I would call idle time. In other words, the house isn't pulling a lot of power. We're not walking around. We're not working on the computer, watching TV and things like that. We're in bed sleep. So you got 10 hours of nighttime there where you don't really need to have the coffee maker on or any of those things. The only thing that's going on is maybe the furnace is kicking in out a certain time of year, so that might be running on and off. Your refrigerator and freezers, and that's about it. So your amount of constant draw per hour on your house is going to be much less than it is when you're on a day's routine and doing things. So I can run the house on the 3001, and it'll let those batteries last for several hours more, theoretically. So anyway, that's the thought behind it, is that maybe I can have both, and I think I can put both inverters on this cart as well as the extra battery, and I'm going to increase the weight from about 450 pounds to about 600 pounds, but this cart will still take all that weight because it's rated at 1,200 pounds, and it still does roll pretty easy. The steering sucks, but the rolling of it is really, really easy. So that's the other next improvement I want to make to this. So after I'm also thinking about that 12 volt add-on system, that actually leads me into the other idea I'm also going to do too, and that is that this front steering on this thing, it's like any wagon, and it just steers, and it really, you can steer it pretty easy, and then you can push But if you're trying to steer and push at the same time with this steering, it's a pain in the butt. It doesn't work very well. So I think that, see if I can spin around here. Yep, you can still see it now. But this thing is doesn't steer real well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this inverter and the other inverter and have them back to back and more upright, completely upright. They might have a slight angle on them, and I might go to like a teepee in this area, and they'll be standing up about this high, I imagine, when I'm done. And then the inside between the two, as it opens up and gives me the full width of the card at the bottom half, that's where I'll be able to do all my wiring and and then I'll be able to also underneath put the cords, accessories that will go with this unit, because it's going to have a couple different power cords in there that I have to pull out to use it to plug in. Anyway, as far as the steering goes, then I think I can add, because right now the only pivot point is under here, and what I want to do is I've got to figure it out, I think, how I can attach on that front yoke a self-propelled dolly wheel. What they're usually made for is to put on a boat trailer, and they're electric drive, so that it runs off of 12 volts. And what you do is you put that on the trailer, and then you can move it around, walk it around and move it and park it without having to have it attached to a vehicle to move it around. Anyway, they're about $250, so I think that would not be a bad thing to put on there. I can attach it right to that yoke, so basically the front axle would be a 3-wheel tripod area with one of the wheels being a drive wheel. And then I can take and put an arm on it so I can steer it like you would a rudder on a boat. And I think maybe that might be a better way to be able to move it around with an electric switch and just steer it with the arm, and then I can go back and forth with ease, and I think I can make a nice little driving cart out of this. And that I think I would really like then, so I could actually move it around as needed. Not that I need to move it around, and everybody says, well, why make it mobile? Well, why not? So the nice thing about it is I could take this and load it up and take it to plug it into any house in North America out there, as long as we put an L1430R receptacle on the house. And if you got that on there, then this thing will plug into it. Also, you'll be able to plug it into an IV and use it to charge up and run the IV. So, and also, theoretically, you could take it out in the middle of a field and power up anything you want to take out there in the middle of the field. You don't need to be at one location in order to use it. So it is somewhat mobile, but it is going to weigh enough that I think an electric drive would not be a bad thing. And since we're just playing with this at this point, it works, it's functional, let's make it an OTB thing. So we're going to put, I think, electric drive on this thing and make it so that I can power steer it and make it much easier to move this monster around, because it does weigh a little bit. So anyway, that's my plans with it. I don't know what you think about it. If there's something else going on here that you think that I might want to try to do to it, you can let me know. But I am very happy with the way it's going at this point. And I'm very glad that it works very well for my needs. Whenever I lose power, at least now, I'll be able to still function in the house by having full power to access anything that I absolutely have to have. So, money-wise, at this point, I have about $5,600 wrapped up in it. If I put the electric drive on there, and I am adding a battery, and I'm also putting that other inverter, we're probably going to be closer to probably $8,000 to $8,500 wrapped up in this HBS. But what the heck? All I'm doing is spending the kids' inheritance anyway. So, But in all reality, that's not a bad price. That's still less than what you'd pay for most of those systems out there that are for sale right now that you look at, like whether it's the EcoFlow or the Blue Eddy. And most of those, you have to buy 2 units and then put a hub between them. So you really need to have some kind of cart to put all that on anyway if you're going to make it mobile. So I don't see much coming. They're now starting to come out with their own inverters. Anchor has a nice looking one, the F3800. And who else? There was somebody else that makes a pretty nice unit like that. Anyway, they're starting to come out and get smart that you need to have a 240 volt system. But at this point, they really do not have enough kilowatt hour of power with those units to make them worthwhile. You have to buy quite a bit of battery to get up to what I have here, to really get to what would be a true daily need of power for your house, and that would vary extremely in your house. I am fortunate here that I have natural gas, and so my electrical output here is, like I say, somewhere between 23 and 44 kilowatts, depending. Without summer, I stay under 30 kilowatts a day. But that's because the only thing that's electric here, really, that's 240 is my well pump and my air conditioner and my furnace. Now, the furnace really doesn't pull much power. The air conditioner does. But those are the only high output things that I have at my house. So a lot of houses have electric dryers and electric hot water heaters and electric ranges and and so they have to have a much bigger system in those houses. So I'm very fortunate to have what I have so I can still get by when the power goes out. So like I said, I don't want a long-term off-grid usage. That's not what this is about. It's just so I have power, because where you do have power outages out here in the rural, a small town in USA, and I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. So hopefully this will be enough to have me prepared to get through those short periods of time, and that we won't get into a full Armageddon where I have to be off power for years. And hopefully that won't happen. If it does, I at least will have time to regroup and figure out how to make my system work so I can stay in the home rather than having to get in the car and bug out. So anyway, that's my thought about the way it's going. If you have any thoughts about my HBS, let me know. Any ideas of how to make it better? I'd love to hear them, because the sky's the limit what I'm going to do with this. So at this point, I think that those are kind of the things I want to do to make this thing kind of a fun project rather than just absolutely have to have. So I've got it that way now. It's at its minimum of what I need to make and do what I need it for. So now it's time to play with it and make it really very, very cool. So, one more thing. I'm not going to leave it setting here. It's not a good spot. Even though the cables will reach and plug in directly right here, I think what I'm going to do is I bought a 25-foot cord. Because the way this works, you have power in and power out. So depending on whether I want to use it to power the house or I want to recharge it, as to which cord I would use, I'm only going to use one at a time. So instead of setting here, so it has to be within 12 feet, because that's how long these cords are now. I bought a 25-footer, and now I'm actually going to put this back over near the front door, the overhead door, so I can roll it in and out of here easier if I need to do that sort of thing. And from there, the 25-foot cord will actually, between the 12-foot here and the 25-foot cord, I could put it anywhere in my shop and it would reach the plug-in. So, and I would just run the cord and plug it in during that time period. So anyway, it's going to find another home, and like here. I originally thought I would leave it in this area, but it's going to be too tall and too bulky really to do that, so that's okay. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm at. If you have any thoughts about it, anything you want to and suggest. I would love to hear your ideas because, like I said, the sky's the limit. And yes, I'm now rambling on. So, before I go, just to show you real quick, over the years, I've made 3 or 4 hammers, and I thought I'd share that with you real quick, the ones that I've made in my shop and why I use what I use. First off, right here, this was the first hammer I ever made. I actually did this on the lathe, really rough, but I only needed this because I used a lot of repurposed a lot of furniture and cabinets. This was really great for breaking them down. My metal hammer, 4-pounder, it would bust up the wood. This thing was able to allow me to take things apart the easy way. Sometimes the only way to get it apart. And this thing has been around a long time. I still use it from time to time. But I do like it. It's a handy hammer to have. It's just simply something to hit on that. And that hopefully this gets damaged before whatever I'm hitting gets damaged. So anyway, that was the first hammer. And as you know, I'm big on bench dog holes around the shop. I use them all over to put things in. So one of the hammers that I made, well, in fact, all the hammers I pretty much have made, except for the monster one up there, all have dowels for handles. This is what I've noticed. I made this one on the Legacy. It's a, what kind of wood is that? I think it might be a red oak. So anyway, and this, I used this thing for years. This thing's probably 30 years old or older. And that was the first one, that little hammer that I made. Then I tried to make a round one. Everybody always talks about using a round hammer. I'll tell you the truth. I don't like it. I prefer a flat head hammer myself. But I have it. Now and then I do use it. And of course, abuse it. The only other 2 hammers I have that I've made in all these years is, I made this one. Again, it was based on, very similar to this one. Only this was a piece of dowel that I had made or bought, I can't remember, or scrounged somewhere. 2 inches in diameter, a little bigger than the little one here. And I put a little longer handle on it with some grip tape. And that's to keep it from dropping down all the way. Really, more than anything, the grip tape. But that actually is one of my favorite hammers. But believe it or not, my best hammer I use the most, and I keep it closest to where I do most of my work, because I have these hammers set in different places, so I have a hammer close at hand if I need to tap something. But this has been my go-to hammer almost always, which is weird because it's the weirdest looking hammer out there that I've seen. And again, just a dowel, simple hammer, but I use this thing all the time when I have to pick up a hammer. And it does a fairly good job on virtually anything I use it for. Plus, and sometimes unorthodox uses, like sometimes I even pound from the sides, or I've been known to even pound with just this if I needed to. So, depending on what you're doing, it's kind of an oddball size, but actually, it's the one that I use the most, as you can tell by how much it's beat up. So, anyway, those are just some of the hammers I made. I thought I would share that with you too, just to keep you hanging on here a little while longer. But in all reality, I would love to see if you have any pictures of your hammers that you've made. I'd love to see them. As you can see, I like to keep things simple most of the time, because I do abuse my tools too. I've been known to use a screwdriver as a chisel more than once. So, or grind away a little bit on the handle so that it'll fit down in there to do what I need it to do. So, but that's the mechanic in me. That's what I used to do years and years ago. And as a mechanic, you did abuse your tools. So, anyway, I want to thank you for coming by. If you have any thoughts or any questions, any comments, just leave them down below. I do enjoy reading them. If you learned something here, or you like this video, hit that like button. Lets me know I'm doing something right. Most importantly, though, please come back again, because I'm nowhere near done. Thanks, and we'll see you guys again very soon.